Oh my goodness. Okay. Thank you for telling me you couldn't hear me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I had my sound turned off. Oh my goodness. Thank you, whoever that was that gave me that chat. So thankfully, I'm also recording on a video camera. So if I use that footage in this final production, you'll hear everything I said. Okay, let me let me repeat. Thank you, audience, for that heads up. 3 layers of mylar. So I draw on 6 different layers: front, back, front, back, front, back. I said that the very last page is going to be painted solid, opaque, opaque white and opaque black, maybe some colors. Probably won't even need color. The back page maybe, thank you, Femox. The back page may just be black and white. Okay, so the real value of the multiple layers. So what I was pointing out, what the last thing is, here it is, pitch black, black indie ink on layer 6, and here's how little of that you can still see the outline of where it is, but it's just a ghost. So that means I have super control. Now, what if I want darker than that? Oh, easy. I've already done it. If I want it darker than that, I don't do black on layer 6. I do black on layer 4. Okay? And then that gives me oh, and a little bit on layer 3. Oh, so anyway. So see, I can get much darker. And if I want it any darker than this, then I'll pick up a pen that has pure black India ink, and I'll do black right on the final surface. So this is what I'm calling, and I'm sorry you missed all of the introductory statements. This is what I'm calling state-of-the-art, pen and ink cross-hatching state-of-the-art. And what I said that you didn't hear was there may be somebody in the world that is doing way more sophisticated pen and ink than I am, which is rapidograph pens, any kind of pen will do, but with colored ink. And it's not ink at all. It's actually a very high quality liquid acrylic made for airbrushes. So let's do a little bit of drawing, shall we? I've already done some. So let me zoom in here for you guys. And let me zoom in on my other camera as well, the one that's taking the more sophisticated video footage. So bear with me for just a minute while I get this lined up. Okay. I'm hoping that you YouTube live people can see the faint orange cast to her arm. Am I zoomed in all the way? I am. That's as far as I can go. Can you see that? I think you can. Well, where did that come from? Well, it came from, this is, again, a pale orange brown ink on the back of page 2, layer 2. And I've also done some on the face. Let's go back and look at her face. Can you see the faint orange flesh tone glow on her face? I think you probably can. That's actually one layer further away than page 2. That's actually on layer 3. Does that make sense? So when it comes to the, let me pull the charcoal out again just for a minute. So when it comes to the very, very pale, thank you, Femox, for answering that question. See all this softness. This is the kind of stuff that is not typically, you can't typically accomplish this in pen and ink, right? Pen and ink is fairly, I'm thinking of like the etchings of Albrecht Dürer. You know, he is a master of achieving halftones, but I'm going to be able to do way more halftones than he ever dreamed of, because I'm working on Mylar and I'm using colored ink. I'm not competing with Albrecht Dürer. Are you kidding? But and there will be the girl will be in color. The background will be sepia toned, but made up of multiple colors. So I've done a little bit of experimentation way up here in the corner. Again, I'm hoping you can see some of it. There are bits of green. There's actually blue here, red, yellow, orange, brown, and black, all mixed up, because that's in the final illustration. I want multiple colors throughout this background, but overall, as you can see, it's still going to be brownish. Now, I happen to be holding here in my hand another tool that, in my mind, makes this pen and ink cross-hatching state of the art. It's an etching tool, and because I'm working on Mylar, I can actually come here and scratch out some of the ink. Now, of course, I'm only scratching off the ink that's on the very topmost layer. If I want to do more than that, then I have to go back here to page 2 and scratch. And I can always turn on a light table if I need to see where I'm going. Does that make sense? Which really does help. And so if I scratch off both layers, then I'm creating a new vine here. So that's one of the tricks of the trade, one of the tools that I'm using. So you see I just added that little vine there. Now I don't want that vine to be white, so I'm picking up now a pen that has a green ink in it, and I'm going to come in here and do cross-hatching right on top of that little area that I just etched out in green. Now that's very intense green. If I wanted a very subtle green, like let's say this vine right here, if I want that to be very subtle, I can either do it on page 6, 5, 4, 3, or 2 or 3. And I think page 3 is going to be about right. So again, just to help you catch a vision for how this works. And now you can see, by the way, why I have every one of these pages is carefully numbered. Because if it weren't numbered, I wouldn't be able to remember where I am. Actually, I'm going to do it on page 4. So here we go. I'm doing it the back of page 4. Bear with me for just a minute while I get this all flattened out. I've created a hinge down here at the bottom, and I don't know if you can see that line, but I can. But if I turn on this light, you'll be able to see it as well as I. And I'm just doing some really sloppy, and I call this scribble hatching, which is the kind of cross hatching where you make the pen draw in both directions. In fact, now that I'm back here, hang on, let's do some fun stuff. This girl is going to be wearing a teal blue colored shirt. Hey, John Chafin, I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. So because she's wearing a teal blue shirt, I have a Viridian green ink. And of course, as you know, teal blue is a greenish blue. So I'm going to go ahead and let's do some, as I'm doing right here, some green on the front of her shirt. And that, by the way, this is going to give me an opportunity to show you another trick, one more trick that I'm using. And by the way, I don't know if you can tell this or not, but when I'm back here on layer 4, which is, what kind of light table do I use? Well, it's made by Seerite, 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 Seerite. I bought this table, I can tell you exactly, in 1987, 31 years ago. And at the time, I paid what I thought was an exorbitant price, and in fact it was. It was $120, which if my calculations are right, our inflation is from 1987 is nearly double, so I think it probably cost $200, which seemed awfully expensive, and it is, and it was. But I have so much gotten my money's worth out of it. So I want to show you one of the other little tricks of the trade. Again, these are just things that you discover through doing, through practicing. So hang on just a second. I need to step across the room and get a new... Oh, I'm sorry. I was telling you, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm actually going outside the lines very slightly. Here, way back here on layer 4... each layer you go down, the colors can get more, the layers can become more imprecise, and it doesn't matter. Mostly you want to go outside the lines. Why? Wow. Well, okay, here's when I'm painting, if you watch me paint, you'll hear me make reference. I'm going to stop right there. You'll hear me make reference to one of the breakable laws of painting, which is we like to see little bits of the object in the background and background in the object. So in other words, in painting, all our edges should not be hard and stiff. There should be a softness to many of our edges. Okay, so that's actually what I'm achieving here. Even though it's pen and ink, I don't want all my edges to be perfectly solid. So again, I've shown you one trick, which was you can use I'll do it again here. You can use a scratcher from an etching tool to come in here and remove lines. Do you see that? Okay, I sort of have to finish now that I started. The only downside of this is that it puts a slightly different texture, leaves a slightly different texture, and so that you can't do everything that you were doing because of those lines. Now, okay, here's a Q-tip, a tissue. I have just dipped this. In fact, I'm going to pull. There's too much cotton on that Q-tip. And forgive me, I know I'm saying a brand name, but in America, that's what most of us call it. I've just dipped it in denatured alcohol, and it's fairly dry. And I'm going to draw with this now. And I am, in effect, erasing. Now, I don't want to make it all real cloudy like a watercolor, so I really want to make it fairly white. And I can achieve that just by how much I rub, how often I rub. So there you go. So there's another trick for pen and ink cross-hatching, removing the ink that you just put on with denatured alcohol. Let me finish now this. By the way, I've put tape on the top of each rapidograph pen so that I can tell what color ink is in that particular pen. Tell you what, I should have done this before we go on. Let's see what this looks like. Okay, let's go all the way back to page 1. I am so glad I numbered these. This would get so complicated. Okay, there we go. There, that is sweet. And now, can you see? Yes, you can see the green. Why don't I just paint it? Well, because I want everything in this illustration to have this cross-hatching, this pen and ink texture, even though it's very subtle. Now, I could achieve this same thing by putting a very watered down version of this ink. Do you understand? I could do the same thing, and perhaps I could. It would take more time, more control, more fussing. I'd be changing the ink on this so many times. So that's why I'm doing it, achieving the same thing through layers of mylar. So does that look like fun to you? I hope it does. Let me experiment a little bit. So I've got because it's going through 2 layers of mylar, it's very pale. But how about with the same color, if I come in here and start doing some green right on layer number 1? Do you see how much stronger that is? Do you see how much more intense it is? And it's a little bit dangerous. It's like, oh boy, is that too much? I don't think it is too much, partly because I know that I'm going to be coming back over this area with a blue, which will be darker than the green. But I'm not going to do any more than that. That's enough. Does that make sense? I had a blue ink, but I had to. These pens are wonderful, but rather temperamental, and I had to empty my blue to make room for another dark brown. So, tell you what, let me do, since I've got, I think the dark brown pen is functioning well right now. Let me double check. I think it is. I almost always have a few post-it notes here. This is all part of standard pen and ink drawing, any kind of pen and ink. Because here I am shaking it. Dangerous to shake it over your illustration. Okay, this is a slightly larger point, a nib, so it's going to make stronger lines than what I was just using with the green. The green is the smallest point that I'm using on this job. They make smaller ones, but the smaller they get, the more temperamental they are. Does that make sense? So in case you're wondering, this is the green that is not small. Where is it? Anyway, this here, this that's not it either. Never mind. I'll just tell you the smallest is the tan color if you're using a rapidograph pen, and it's a 0.25 millimeter or a 30 is the size. And so right now I'm not using the smallest. I'm using next to the smallest for this illustration. I'm not going to use this by any means. The smallest. They're way too temperamental. But this is a fairly heavy nib, and it's got dark brown ink, black and brown paint mixed together. And it's actually, in this case, it is ink. It's India ink mixed with the acrylic paints. By the way, and this is for all of you who use acrylics in any way whatsoever. If you don't know this, it's a good tip. Denatured alcohol is the solvent for acrylic paints. So if when I clean these pens, or if the ink, God forbid, the ink dries inside them, which happens all the time, even though God forbid it, I clean them with denatured alcohol. So that's it, and the same thing for acrylic paints. Denatured alcohol is the solvent. So if you use acrylics in any way in your art business, you need to buy a gallon. If you're like me, just go ahead, go to the hardware store and buy a big gallon of denatured alcohol cleaning up. And that's also, as you remember, what I put on the Q-tip just a few minutes ago. So I've just done a little bit more of the texture in the bark. I don't love that color. Let's see if I've got. Oh, here's my small nib that I was looking for. That's right. Now this has got an orange-ish brown ink, and it's the smallest of all nibs that I'm using, the 0.25 millimeter, and it's going to be too gentle to accomplish much. I think this. Oh, there we go. This is a much larger nib, and has straight orange. Because I'm looking at this tree trunk right here, and it's orange. But when orange goes transparent, it turns very yellow. So this looks like yellow, and that's fine with me. Generally speaking, I want the background, the illustration. Again, this illustration, I want it to have a warm brown feeling. So now what I've just done right there is too yellow. I don't have to change. I don't have to take it off because this is all going to get darker. But I just want to take a second to show you what I'm going to do. I think my red pen is in good working order. My wife downstairs has gotten so accustomed to that tapping. She's heard this coming from my studio literally for decades. She knows where I am and what I'm doing. When she hears that, and she no longer says, "Come in." Yeah, she knows it's me. No, I'm not getting. It seems to be working there, but when I come back to the Mylar there, it's barely working. Okay. Now, there are all kinds of questions someone could ask. Well, couldn't you do the same thing with a different kind of pen? Yes. With a dip pen? Yes. A crow quill pen would probably be my next choice. If I'm not using a rapidograph pen, then I would use a dip pen. Why not use a dip pen? Well, because you have to dip. You have to stop more often. You have to take more breaks to add the colored ink. And of course, the dip pen is dangerous because it's more likely to drip. They could call it a drip pen, and it would be a very accurate name. I just did a little bit of red on that girl's neck. In fact, let me do just a little bit. Let me see if this. Nope, I'm not going to. I was going to do a little bit of red here where I did the green. Why? Because it was a little too green. So if I come back with red, it'll make it more subtle. But the red is being temperamental. When it gets real temperamental like this, I take the pen all apart, clean it again, and we're back to zero. Put whatever color I want in it. Anyway, I hope that's interesting. I'll be doing more broadcasts of this job because, as you can tell, it probably took me 4 hours to do the first 2 layers of crosshatching just on this front page. No, 6 hours. 3 hours. 3 hours for all the lines that go this way. 3 hours for all the lines that go that way. That's 6 hours just for my first 2 layers. And I have many more layers to go. Whew. Sound like fun? Well, it is kind of. And I listen to a lot of good podcasts while I'm doing it. Okay? But I'm going to stop there. Hope that's fun. And like I said, I'm going to finish this broadcast right here. But I'll be letting you see I'll let you see me do more of this in the days to come.